Thank you for making time to watch this short video. I hope that you find that this video is an efficient use of your time, as it will walk you through this handout. It may be that this handout is very easy for you and you don't need any additional help. You don't have to use this video, but I do want to ensure that anyone who does need a little help or just wants to check your answers even has an opportunity to do so in this online format. Just to get started here, please note the instructions for your written work. Although you're completing the worksheet and typing in some of the answers, you do need, in addition, to submit your written work on Blackboard. So make sure that you are writing your work neatly in a way that shows not that you just had the answer somehow, but that you used the process and understood the process by which to find these answers. Once you've finished, what you'll need to do is scan your written work as a single PDF file. The name of your PDF file should be your last name, first name, and then Handout 1. Save a copy of your PDF on your computer and then upload it on Blackboard. Let's look at this first question. And notice that the directions do say again to show all your work neatly on line paper. Here's the first question. The total cost of 12 surfboards is $4,800. I've highlighted that pink, and then I've translated it here in pink. The cost of 12 items equals 4,800. C of 12 equals 4,800. That's our function. And then looking at the blue statement, the cost to produce 25 surfboards is $6,750. So C of 25 is $6,750. I'm not sure if you recognize what's going on here, but what we have is two ordered pairs. For the pink function, what this means is that when X is 12, Y is 4,800. And that blue function means that when X is 25, Y is 6,750. So we could write these two ordered pairs. Do you see what to do next if we want to get a cost function? Let me try to give you a little hint here. We have 2 points, 2 x's and 2 y's, and we want a cost function. C of x equals mx plus b. Does that look familiar? Y equals mx plus b. Yeah, all we're going to do is find the slope, the m, and then use the points and the slope to find the slope, the b, the y-intercept. So to start with the slope, slope is equivalent to the change in x, I'm sorry, scratch that, I'm multitasking here, the change in y divided by the change in x. Do you follow what that means? We're looking at how does the y value is the C of 12, not the 12, but the C of 12, or in other words, the 4,800. How does that 4,800 change, so the change in y, with respect to the x, so with respect to the 12? To do this, we'd say that the difference of the two y's, so 6,750 and 4,800, their difference, divided by the difference of the two x's, the 12 and the 25. Now, as long as I keep the order consistent, I could start with either the 4,800 or the 6,750. Now, I put the 6,750 first because it's bigger, but I could have swapped these around. Let me show you what that would look like. I could have swapped these around and done, I could have done it with the 4,800 at first, and I would have gotten a negative difference, right? But in doing that, you then also have to swap the x's, the denominator. So do you see that we'd get a negative and a negative, which would end up being positive, but the absolute value is equivalent, isn't it? So either order is okay as long as you're consistent. And this is what I like about doing this in color. We can clearly see that the blues have come first and the pinks have come last. If I swap it, then the pinks go first together and then the blues. But either way, when you subtract those values, we can get a y change of 1,950 and an x change of 13. When you divide those, we get that the slope, or m, is equivalent to 150. Do you remember from your basic algebra how to solve for the b in the y equals mx plus b? There's two different equations that you may be familiar with doing this process with. I like to just stick with this y equals mx plus b. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one or the other. Let's just pick this pink one. And I'm going to replace the y with the 4,800. The m we know is 150. Replace the x with 12. And that's going to give me b. That's how I could use the y equals mx plus b. You might also be familiar with the point slope equation. If you're familiar with that, feel free to use that process to get the equation. Either way would be fine. But once we have this 150 as the slope, we can find that b is equivalent to 3,000. And if you do need more help with any of that algebra, then reach out to me during office hours or through email, and I could give you a little more detail there. Let's interpret these results. Find the linear cost function. I have that is the cost of x items is 150 times x plus 3,000. So plus 3,000. The fixed cost is this 3,000. The fixed cost is the 3,000. That's the b. Now I know some of you are tempted to just memorize this. You're writing this down for really neatly and carefully, and hope to just bank on always putting this into a equivalent pattern because you want to memorize a process. But let's take a step back and think through what a fixed cost means. It means, what's the overhead cost? What does it cost if we made no items? Just what have we already invested? And that's always going to be that constant. If we looked at a XY graph and we're going to graph our cost, what is our cost before we even started creating anything? Right, that is our y-intercept, or in this case, the 3,000. The fixed cost is the 3,000. The variable cost is going to be the slope. The variable cost is how much it costs for each item, and that's the 150. And then we could use this function to calculate the cost of 100 surfboards. So if I found C of, oh, sorry, let me go back. I think I swapped screens too early. If I were to find, let me write it out here. If C of x is 150x plus 3,000, so C of x is 150x plus 3,000, all I need to do is replace this x with 100 to find the average cost to produce 100 surfboards. So the cost of 100 surfboards is 150 times that 100 plus that fixed cost of 3,000. I'm going to leave that calculation for you to finish. Let's look at the second question. The second question about coffee makers. The total cost to produce 20 coffee makers is 2,500. The variable cost to produce one coffee maker is $25, and we can sell the coffee makers for $40. How much do we need to sell so that we can break even? If we write the cost function, C of x equals mx plus b, and we know that when x, I could interpret this statement as when x equals 20, y is 2,500. So I can write this ordered pair 20, comma 2,500. Let's see what else we can gather from the blue. The variable cost to produce one coffee maker is $25. So the variable cost is the M, and I've got that highlighted in blue. And then the revenue, R of X, is going to be 400 times X. 40. I wrote 40, but said 400. Sorry about that. The revenue of X items, so how much money comes in, is $40 times the number that we sell. So 40 times X. R of X equals 40X. That's how we could interpret these two pieces of information. And the break-even point, when we are looking for how many must we sell to break even, break-even means find X, so how many do we need to sell, such that the cost of those X items is equivalent to the revenue from the X items. So for what value of X does the cost equal the revenue? Here's how we could go about doing that. When we set this these two functions equal, so the cost of X equal to R of X, so 40 times X, we can find our X. Let's start by finding a cost function. So if I know that the cost of 20 is equal to 2,500, let me highlight that for you. If I know that the cost of 20 items is 2,500, then I know that M, and if I know that M is 25, then 2,500 equals 25 times 20 plus B. Let me walk through how I did that. I'm not sure how clear it is. Everyone's at a different, one challenge with this class, with finite math, is that everyone is kind of coming in at a different algebra level. So maybe it's really easy for you, but let me explain it just a little bit further, just in case there's anyone that we don't want to leave behind. If the cost of 20 items is $2,500, then I could say that 25, that's our M, times X, so 25, so here, so 25 for M, times X, and if X is 20, 25 times 20 plus the fixed cost is going to equal $2,500. When we solve that equation for B, we find that the fixed cost is $2,000. So the cost function is C of X equals 25X plus 2,000. We already have that the revenue function is 40X, so all I need to do now is set those two equations equal to each other. The revenue function, R of X, is equal to the cost function, 25X plus 2,000, and solve for X. Now let me give you a little tip about this one. When you solve for X, you're not going to get a nice, easy whole number, and we're not going to just round according to normal rounding standards. When you read this question, how many must we sell? You can't sell a fraction of a coffee maker, right? Not legally anyhow. So what we'll have to do in this case is if we don't get a whole number answer, and I'll tell you now that you shouldn't get a whole number answer, But when you don't get the whole number answer, you'll have to round up. So make sure that you round up for this one once you get your fraction answer for x. The number of coffee makers we'll need to make, produce, and then sell will round up. Let's look at the third question here. To produce X units of marble masks, it costs 12 C of X, the cost function, equals 12X plus 39. And we're given that the revenue function, R of X, equals 25X. Both the cost and revenue functions are in dollars. Find the break-even point. Remember that the break-even point is that point, that number of X's, such that the cost is equal to the revenue. Just take a step back and think about this. If you had a small business of your own, you're making some gadget, then at what point would you break even, cover all of your costs? You're going to cover all of your costs once you bring in enough money, so that's your revenue, once your revenue equals your cost, right? So all we have to do to get the break-even point is set the cost equal to the revenue. Some students will see this as find the number of X's such that the profit is 0. But it's a little bit more concise, a little bit easier and less steps if we just see that break-even is when the cost and revenue are equivalent. If we solve this equation, let me make sure everyone sees where these came from. The cost is the 12x plus 39. Equivalent is equivalent to the revenue, the 25x. So if I solve this for x, I can find the break-even point. And let's go on to the next step then. And so I'm going to leave that calculation for you to finish. Find the profit from 250 units. Profit is going to be equivalent to the revenue minus the cost. Watch out, by the way, I'm going to say this several times throughout this example. Watch out for this minus. We've got to subtract the 12x and subtract that fixed cost of 39, right? So watch how we're going to distribute a negative. I'm going to say that several times, but I want to highlight that again and again. So we're going to subtract the whole cost, 12x plus 39, from the revenue. Here's what this would look like if I replaced the parentheses with an x. The profit of x items is equal to $25 times however many items we've sold minus the cost. So minus the $39 fixed cost and minus 12x, 12 times the number of surfboards sold. Now let me assure you that, oh, these are marble masks, I'm sorry. A marble mask, yeah, maybe the fixed cost could be $39 because maybe there's not a huge investment made to be able to get this. But what we're going to do is set that profit equal to 30 or 130 and solve for x. But again, make sure you distribute this negative. That seems to be the most common error to make. So as you do this, make sure that you distribute that. You should get a positive result. Well, I hope that this helps you work through this handout. As you type your answers into Blackboard, you'll know whether your answers are correct or not. And you could always go back to revise, watch the video again if needed, and revise. But again, thanks for viewing the video, and I do hope that this 20 minutes watching the video has been a helpful 20 minutes. Please reach out to me if you need further assistance.